How's it going, you guys? The 1MFP here. I hope you're all having a great day today. I'm ready to react to another song off of Tyler Joseph's No Phun Intended. I've listened to 5 songs thus far, so I'm gonna get into track number 6 here today. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Matt. I post reaction videos here. After watching this video, you'll probably get a better idea of my approach to reaction videos. So if you like what you see in this reaction, please take the time to check out some of my other reactions. And if you enjoy them, please hit that subscribe button. I always appreciate the support. Now let's get into this. Track number 6 off of No Phun Intended goes by the name of I Want to Know, with the subject matter presented to the listener off of the first few tracks off of No Phun Intended. I kind of get the feeling that this is going to be another song about Tyler's faith. You know, thus far, if we look at the tracks I've already reacted to off of No Phun Intended, with the exception of Taken by Sleep, pretty much all of them have touched on the subject of Tyler's conflict between who he wants to be versus who he thinks he needs to be. He talks about that struggle. He talks about the influence of his faith on that struggle. And with that said, with a title like I Want to Know, I'm thinking of implicit demand for proof in ways. I'm also thinking of trees because of that I want to know you line. So I'll be interested to see if there's any links between this song and those songs. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into this. I Want to Know by Tyler Joseph off of No Phun Intended. Let's go.
I tried to sing for you, I tried to live for you, I tried to keep the truth, oh yeah, I failed to sing for you, I want to know,
This is so different.
Trying to sing for you, trying to live for you, trying to keep the truth. I want to know, I want to sing, I want to be with you. I am weak, I want to know.
Alright, so there we have it. I Want to Know. This one felt a little bit more on the experimental side, especially if I'm taking his vocals into consideration. With the chorus, he's got 2 different vocal styles going on, and he's using that to create a separation. It kind of allows him to fit 2 choruses into one, and they're going on simultaneously. It's an interesting choice from a musical standpoint. I'm wondering what his inspiration was for that. One of the songs that does this that comes to mind is from Pink Floyd, Wearing the Inside Out. I'm sure there's a lot of different examples of songs that do this. I'm curious to know what Tyler's inspiration was for doing it here in this song. Now, while I find that approach interesting and creative, I do find that the mixing once more takes away from that aspect of the song. With Taken by Sleep, it really felt like the lyrics needed to be at the forefront of the music, and at times it felt like the instrumentals were overpowering what Tyler had to say, and that kind of took away from the listening experience in general. Here, once again, the mixing gets in the way of one of the more interesting aspects about this song. And with that said, I think this song could be remade, and it would be really interesting to hear what the final product would sound like. And I am curious to know if there was a time lapse between when Tyler made the first few songs off of No Phun Intended and when he made the last 2 that I've reacted to, so Taken by Sleep and this one here. It just feels that there's a difference in quality between the mixing from Blasphemy to Save and then Taken by Sleep and I Want to Know. Now when it comes to the lyrics, like I mentioned before actually listening to the song, it did feel like there would be some parallels between this song and Trees, just because of that I want to know you line in Trees. And sure enough, towards the end of the song, once we get into the last chorus, I started being brought back to Trees. He says, I want to know, I want to see, I want to be with you when I am weak. With that in mind, this goes back to Tyler's struggling between identities. You know, with Trees, Tyler is trying to reach out to God. He's trying to have a conversation with God. And if I take the self-titled album and Regional at Best into consideration, he's seeking out answers. I talked about this theme where Tyler feels torn between identities, where, you know, he's torn between who he wants to be versus who he thinks he needs to be because of his faith. I think he may sometimes feel like he's being pulled away from the side of him that's trying to be what he wants to be, and he's being brought closer to his faith out of guilt. It's like he feels that he's doing something wrong. I think he's looking for answers so that he could be brought back to the side of him that represents faith, and he could be brought back to that identity without guilt being the reason why he's there. He doesn't necessarily want to stray away from that identity, but there's questions he needs answers to if he's not going to stray away from it. Now, to bring that into this song, in the verses he says, I tried to sing for you, I tried to live for you, I tried to keep the truth, but I failed to sing for you, I failed to live for you. So the whole trying to sing and live for you part, that to me just means he tried to live in correspondence to his faith. And when he says, I tried to keep the truth, that to me means he tried to conform. He tried to live within those guidelines. So when he says, I failed to sing for you, I failed to live for you, that to me means he strayed away from his faith and he was living in a way that was more in line with what he wanted to be as opposed to what he felt he was expected to be. And that brings me back into the chorus, especially into that other part of it, you know, the part that overlaps the, well, I don't know what to call it. Let's just say there's chorus 1 and chorus 2, and chorus 1 is the I want to know, I want to see, I want to be with you when I am weak. Chorus 2 is people look at him and think that he will live his life so perfectly, but what they don't know is he wants to die because he knows that he will never understand. So that second chorus, that overlapping part of the chorus, it brings me to Drown off of this album or Fall Away off of the self-titled album. Either way, it brings me to the part where he talks about saving face and how he'll abuse grace for namesake. That to me meant that he hangs on to this side of him that identifies with his faith as a means to keeping up appearances. He doesn't want to be frowned upon. His faith has laid out guidelines for what he feels a good person is. So he's gonna follow those guidelines to appear like a good person, and that's what we have here. People look at him and think that he lives his life so perfectly. He may think that people have this positive opinion of him because on the surface he appears to be somebody who respects and is in line with his faith. But then he follows that up with, but what they don't know is he wants to die because he knows that he will never understand. So when he goes back home and he takes off that mask, he's gonna be that person who's questioning his faith. And that questioning process really tears him up inside. And with him saying he knows he will never understand, that's him acknowledging that there's no real answers to his questions. The answers to his questions will remain unknown. And that's gonna make it even more difficult for him to pick sides between his faith and who he wants to be. But nevertheless, he ends the song on I want to know, I want to see, I want to be with you when I am weak. When I put all of that together, especially if I take those last two lines into account, so I want to be with you when I am weak, it really brings me back to Drown. There he was talking about hitting a wall at some point, going back to Tyler's two identities where there's one that is in correspondence with his faith and another that is more in line with who he wants to be. This wall is set up on this path towards who he wants to be, and it's there because of his faith. You know, there's the person he is when he is in line with his faith, but then slowly he has these questions that start pulling him away from his faith because those questions aren't being answered, and slowly that leads him to gravitating towards who he wants to be. Somewhere along the line he hits this wall, And this wall prevents him from further continuing in that direction. And he uses words like selfish to describe where he's at that point. It's like once he's reached a certain point in that direction, he starts feeling like he's living only for himself, and that's just not good enough. He feels like there's certain things he has to do in the name of his faith. He has to live for a greater good. And to me, that's what this wall represents. You know, Tyler gets to that point and then these questions become overbearing for him. And that's when this guilt starts taking over and it starts pulling him back towards the side of him that's closer to his faith. But when he's saying, I want to know, I want to see, I want to be with you, it's showing me that he doesn't want to not be on that side. He just doesn't want to be dragged back there because of guilt. At the end of the day, he wants answers. If he could just get those answers, that identity of his that is more in line with who he wants to be, and that other identity of his that is more in line with his faith, they could be closer together and they could be more similar. And at that point, he would be more understanding of who he needs to be. But as he suggests in the chorus, he doesn't feel like he could get those answers, so he struggles. And when it comes to turning to God when he feels weak, I feel like he feels weak once he gets to that point where he starts feeling selfish. In the same way that questions pull Tyler away from his faith once he's more in line with his faith, questions start weighing down on Tyler once he's met with that wall on that path towards who he wants to be. So once he's at that wall, he starts turning to God out of weakness. And that's essentially what I make of this song. In I Want to Know, we have another song that sheds light on Tyler's struggle between identities. This one really felt like a precursor to Trees. For me, it establishes that connection between the struggle and Tyler reaching out to God. Because when I think of Trees and where he says, silent in the trees standing cowardly, I always heard it as Tyler feeling like he's reaching out to God and all he is a human. He's reaching out to something bigger than him. And when he says cowardly, I just picture him in like something very large, and a forest really puts that into perspective, I think. It's just this person amongst these large trees. You're calling out for something, but you don't know what you're gonna get. So that's just how I saw that. But with this song here, it puts it in a bit of a different perspective, you know? I now picture it as Tyler struggling, you know? He's met with that wall. He doesn't know where to go, he's lost. So he turns to God out of desperation and he tries to reconcile with God so he could be brought closer to his faith because he is uncomfortable with where he's at. And that's what I thought of I Want to Know. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. You know, I always love hearing what you guys have to say. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. I always appreciate the support. And I will see you all next time. Have a great day, y'all.